You can't replace part of the brain. Like, you
treat them the same.
A source of truth for the medtech industry.
Coexists with the province.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the medtech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, built $1 billion company that held up high. A lot of things.
State of MedTech with your host, Omar and Khatib. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of MedTech Growth Levers with your host, Omar Khatib, my co-host, Orette Davis. Today is an interesting topic. They're always interesting topics. Today was one that I've been working on for quite some time, so I'm excited to walk people through it. And that is specifically a ad strategy that you use to attract KOLs and, more importantly, create DOLs. So the whole idea is around early adoption and how do you take organic LinkedIn posts and put some ads behind them. So if you're interested in that document, I'm going to drop it in the show notes so you can check it out there. Or for those who are on Zoom, you can grab it right here. Let me just pull it up real quick. And actually, I'll send it out to everybody afterwards, so that way I don't have to do multiple things at once. So with that being said, let's dive into this. And I think we are live over on LinkedIn. So let me share my screen here. And maybe before, as we get started, maybe you can kind of talk us through like how you think about like where LinkedIn ads sit in terms of a marketing strategy.
Ooh, that's a really good one.
It's kind of a loaded question, but let's start there.
It's absolutely a loaded question, right? Because there's a lot of misconception around LinkedIn. And the first thing when you tell people like, hey, I want to run ads on LinkedIn, it's always LinkedIn is expensive.
It's the first thing, yeah.
It's the first thing that you hear that people say. But the counter to that is like LinkedIn is the only platform where you can explicitly target and narrow down your ideal customer profile, right? Role, title, time and position, company size, location. You just can't get that on any other platform. Facebook, Google. So LinkedIn's the only platform that really offers that, right? And the other great thing as well too is the exclusions based off of those factors, right? So hey, I only want to target people that have 500 or 1,000 or 10,000 plus employees that have visited some landing pages that have taken XYZ action. So you get the inclusion and exclusion factors that makes LinkedIn like really powerful. So you just can't get it anywhere else, right? And there's a price to get that level of targeting. So overall, really big fans of LinkedIn. I think it's a really great platform. You just have to be really structured, and you have to approach it in a very structured approach, because you will get burnt if you don't do LinkedIn right.
I completely agree. I completely agree with that. But again, this is where knowing what you're doing is going to be important. But again, while yes, it is more expensive, you're going to benefit from the ability to target the people that you want and not have to guess. I think that's going to be the really big thing there.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
I was going to say even like using LinkedIn as paired with another channel, right? So we're big fans, for example, of using LinkedIn paired with Google. So you get the high intent from Google. So something searching explicitly for your product, your service, your category, software for XYZ, or solution for XY. And then if they visit your page, don't convert, you can then remarket them or retarget them on LinkedIn. And then also add the inclusion or exclusions to that factor as well too. So it's a great power play paired with another channel. I mean, I've got lots of thoughts and opinions on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I'm dropping for everybody on Zoom the SOP for this document, so you can check it out for free. If you're listening to this on the podcast, just check the show notes and you'll see the information there. So let me pan over, and let me do this on Riverside as well, so that we can look through this document and go through it. All right, perfect. So the digital opinion leader ad strategy. So first of all, I want to discuss what exactly is a digital opinion leader. So as opposed to a key opinion leader, a digital opinion leader is someone who as it sounds, is essentially influencing the masses digitally. Now, not every KOL is a DOL, and not every DOL is a KOL. That's a very important thing to point out. KOLs, a lot of times you think of somebody who's going to be on podium, who publishes papers, right? Who has a lot of influence in the traditional channels with their peers. KOLs have a place, and they're very important in your strategy. A DOL, though, is somebody who may not be on podium, maybe they're in private practice, maybe they just don't publish a lot, but because of their following, because of their reach, they can persuade people at scale through the digital channels. I think a combination of a KOL and digital and DOL strategy is important because your KOLs are great for your conferences, they're great for podium, etc. But then throughout the year, right, maybe you have a total of like 5 major conferences you go throughout the year. What do you do in between those is going to be really important. Now, something I want to cover real quick is my favorite chart of all time is the technology adoption curve, right? And it's really important to keep this in mind because what is the whole point of running these ads and everything? So again, when it comes to your product launch, finding early adopters, you're gonna be focused here in this early market, okay? And the thing that you have to keep in mind, as I point out in the document here, let me scroll down here, is that in the document, and I think it's worth people reading, is that we go through the psychology of these people, okay? And so what are the psychology of these innovators here at the very beginning? So again, a lot of people misname this group as all early adopters. Early adopters start getting closer to where you're about 10 to 15% of market penetration. Right before that, you have what I like to call innovators and technology enthusiasts. So it's very specifically as defined, what is their psychology? They're risk takers, they're enthusiastic about new technology, and they're willing to experiment, okay? What I always like to say is, how can you tell if somebody's like a true innovator? They can see the future with their eyes closed, meaning that the moment they see your technology, they're not asking about they might ask about clinical publications and stuff, but they're not going to say like, oh, who else is using this? And then how many papers have you done? And blah, blah, blah. They see it and they get it immediately. On the adoption behavior, very first to try new products. They often seek out cutting edge advancements. They value innovation. They're less concerned about potential risks, okay? These people, I also like to say, have a very high tolerance for pain in the sense that they're not afraid to try new things and be embarrassed or things to go wrong, right? A lot of times people see a key opinion leader and they're like, oh, that's a great early adopter because they adopted the Da Vinci system like 10 years ago. A lot of times you have to think about it, at a certain point, a KOL has developed so much brand identity that they're not willing to risk that on your little startup, okay? And then in the context of like physicians, okay, always eager to try new technology out as soon as it becomes available without needing to see initial success. That's super important, right? And so how do you create that signal to noise, right? Again, as you can tell from this chart here, or actually, hold on, wrong chart, different color. These people who are innovators or tech enthusiasts, there's not a lot of them. So this is the key here, is that like you're in a race against time to find these people. So even if you hire a sales team of 10, 20, 50 people, those people are going to have their own biases. They're not going to shortcut your way to these people. This is where digital marketing is going to help you scale. Now, anytime you have a new technology that comes to market, there's always going to be this hype cycle it goes through in terms of its visibility. New technology comes out, depending on how you promote it, it becomes very, very visible, right? And then the last thing is, again, not applicable to everybody. If you're a J&J or Medtronic, it's very rare that they're creating a new category. It's usually a startup. But a lot of times you have a new category, something that's so new and such a blue ocean that you don't have much of a market to begin with. So when you combine all these three things together, you have this chart where it overlays perfectly. And the main key here is, if you look at the early market, the whole key here is, how do you leverage network effects on social media through paid ads, through organic content to create a very strong signal to noise, engineer a new market, and more importantly, when you create this strong signal to noise, that becomes a way to shortcut yourself to finding these tech enthusiasts, or more importantly, having them find you, okay? So what does this all look like, okay? Now, in this document, we go into a lot of details. The most important thing that I wanted to point out is that when you find, and let me stop sharing here for 1 second, or I'll continue talking for a second over this. Who is going to fit the key, the look of a great digital opinion leader? Always think about somebody who's enthusiastic about the technology. And again, let's go back to the adoption behavior here, because picking the person is super important. Okay. So here we go. There are risk takers. And I want to contrast this for a second. Your innovator, this is the kind of person who's going to create that post, versus what's an early adopter. An early adopter is somebody who's going to be a visionary, opinion leader, comfortable with change, willing to embrace new technologies. Okay. They adopt new things after seeing initial success and benefits. Okay. So this is not going to be your ideal person most of the time. The person you want is a true technology enthusiast, an innovator, somebody who's willing to take the risk. Because think about it, creating a social media post and putting it out there, that's a big risk. Not everybody's going to be okay with that. So you need to identify this person early on. A lot of times what I like to say is, if you look at their adoption behavior or their social media content earlier on, they're a good fit. So I'm going to look at Henry Merkley for a second, who is an example of the ad strategy that we did. We did this with Moon Surgical. If we go all the way back in some of his content, this is, he's very prolific at posting now. But earlier on, see, this is the post that we originally did. But if you look at before this post, you'll see indicators are like, hey, this guy might be the right fit, because what we notice is that, hey, like, he's actually sharing content. He's posting a little bit. It's not his content, but he's sharing things. Okay. So that was the first indicator. The second thing is that we went and talked to him and said, hey, we want to copyright a post for you. Okay. And have you post it. It's very important. You do not allow your adopter or whoever's going to post to just write whatever they want and post it. This is the reason why, is that you want to be able to design a post based on this content funnel. Okay. Specifically is that you want to write a scroll stopping hook, a curiosity generating promise. This has to be engineered so that organic post, once somebody looks at it, there's a high likelihood that they're going to engage. And so if you look at the post that we designed for Dr. Merkley, starting from over here, as a bariatric surgeon, I've been looking for a technology that can improve my practice. Here's why I adopted Moon Surgical's Maestro system. And then we put the emoji pointing down. If we gave this to him, no offense to him, but any surgeon, they would not know how to copyright this. And so this by itself is enough to get somebody to stop scrolling, because you see a identifier such as a bariatric surgeon, right? So the word bariatric surgeon is there in the very first line. And then you have an arrow pointing down to get somebody to click to see more. This is super important, okay? Now, once they post this kind of a post organically on their LinkedIn, give it about 72 hours. That's what, the LinkedIn algorithm is going to do its thing with it. You can see what results you get. Now, this is the part that becomes interesting, which is, how do we start putting more momentum behind this post? Because the whole key is, how do we take an innovator who's in the early market, have them post something about them using a product as a signal to attract other people who, again, when they see this photo of the product or whatever you're promoting, that person gets and is like, yeah, this is something that I'd be interested in. Okay. So once it's posted, what you want to do, and I make this very easy, there's two ways of doing this. We outline this in the document. One is you can do a you gotta help me here. What's the name of the ad? It's a new ad feature where you you select somebody.
The thought leadership.
The thought leadership, yeah. So the only thing about that is that sometimes it does not work. So one is that, at least on my end, the person has had to have tagged your company, right? And sometimes it just doesn't come up. It just seems to not work. I've looked at different accounts. Some of them I find it, sometimes I don't. The easier way is, once this is posted, you take a screenshot of the post, okay, and post it as an image. And the reason why is because when somebody sees this post on LinkedIn, yes, it's going to show that the company's promoting it, but overall it's going to look like an actual post. When you click it, it'll take them to the organic post. This is very important for marketers, okay? You do not want to drive them to a website. This is not for a conversion event. The whole point of this is to pick brand awareness objective, to put this in front of as many people who fit your ICP, or ideal customer profile, in which case you look at your targeting criteria. Think about not only the job titles, but interests. So for example, if you're targeting bariatric surgeons and general surgeons, that's a job title you want to look for. Think about also the groups that they fall into, because if you search groups on LinkedIn, you'll find those. So put that in your targeting criteria, and you let this run for 2 weeks. Okay. It's a very good spend on budget, very good timeline. Okay. You can run this, let this run for a month. But the key here is that since you're putting paid ad money behind something and you're driving traffic to a post, when this post was originally done, we had about, I think, 20 or 30 people who engaged with posts. This is up to 60 now. Okay. And the reason why is that the LinkedIn algorithm will see that more people are spending time on this post, they're engaging with it. There's more social proof behind it. So then they start putting it in front of more people. Okay. And then what you have to do, whether it's you or your sales team, is look and monitor the likes. So when you look at the likes, think of it like this: as a conversion event, it's a lot of friction to get somebody to click a link, go to your website, fill out a form, get a demo, because now they're committing time and everything. Very easy for somebody to commit to a like. We want to go up funnel to where the intent is not as strong. Because think about this: if you want strong intention, it requires a lot of money, a lot of marketing, etc. We want to get to the point where it's like we have an idea of somebody who might be interested in this, and you monitor these likes, and then you can see there's surgeons who've liked this post. In which case you can go outbound to them and say, hey, notice you like Dr. So-and-so's post. We'd love to send you more information. Or you just send them a video recording of your demo. That way you get them into funnel. So let me stop there. I talked a lot. Or, let me get your take and thoughts.
I got a couple for you, right? And I do want to slightly back up here, right? So like, what's the process of finding someone like Dr. Merkel, right? And then with that as well too. So, looking at that page, 3,000, I think he has 3,000 followers, isn't incredibly impressive, right?
Yeah.
You look at other influencers, they've got 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 plus, right? And you would think, I need to go for someone that has that level of followers. But in this case, he's got 3,000. Like, why that?
So a couple of reasons. That's a great question. There's a couple of reasons you want somebody who doesn't have much of a following. Number one, most often than not, and again, I'm generalizing here, they're going to be a little bit easier to work with, right? Because this is new for them. So they're going to be more open to your suggestions, more open to the idea that you're going to copyright for them, etc. The other side of it is that I have no way of proving this, but if you think about how social media works, let's just say specifically LinkedIn. LinkedIn is incentivized to get people addicted to the platform, just like every social platform. If somebody has tens of thousands of followers, everything, they've been making content and everything. So the likelihood that the LinkedIn algorithm is going to take a piece of content and put it in front of more people, it's possible. But if they're a new account, they're just starting to grow and everything, the LinkedIn algorithm wants to push that in front of more people so that it could nurture that person's audience, get those people more interested in that person's content, and also give a little bit of a dopamine hit to that content creator so that they create more content. And so I always tell companies, whether it's a B2B company or a B2C, you're better off finding 3 to 5 micro influencers, right? Versus just one big influencer, because you don't know how people are going to take that kind of a post from, let's say, a very large account, and it becomes a little bit more obvious versus when it looks a lot more organic and natural from a smaller account. I believe it's a lot more better. It's a lot more influential, right? And the key here is that what you want to find is to, the ideal scenario is you have more than one person who can do this. You can do this with. You want to kind of test and say, hey, who is currently a potential KOL in the making, and who's going to sort of move upstream? Because a lot of times the people you use in this early part of the technology adoption curve to attract innovators, they're not going to be your people that you're using to promote your product when you hit the mainstream market. A lot of times those things change, and your company changes, your CEO changes, right? If you think about if you think about most companies, most management teams, they're very different from the early market to the mainstream market. It's the same thing with your customers and your key opinion leaders. The people that love your company and promote at the beginning, they're going to drop off. They'll probably use your product, but you're not going to be involved with them anymore, because when you're hitting the mainstream market, you're not taking their calls for product requests and features and everything. And that's the kind of thing that these innovators love, is that they love the new thing, they love the startup environment, etc. So that's my take on it.
So I'll give a slightly different angle on this. And so something, you talked to, we're looking at digital opinion leaders. It's really just another word for influencer. And we're also talking now about like micro influencers, right? So someone that has a smaller following. But there's something to be said about having a niche audience that's like highly engaged or like highly specific towards your target product, service, or category. And my take on this is like, do the follower audit. Like there's ways on LinkedIn, other tools to see followers of the followers basically, and to see and confirm that, hey, Dr. Merkel is a lot of surgeons or CEOs or sales leaders are all following this person. They all match the titles that we want to go after as well too. And using that as a means to say, hey, you know what? They only have 3,000 or 5,000 followers, but those are 3,000 or 5,000 followers that match our exact ICP versus say a larger influencer on LinkedIn is likely to have a lot more broader general audience, right? That could be all scattered all over the place versus them, they probably have it very specific to your target industries, right? So that's kind of my take on it is like, don't need necessarily massive following. What you need is a targeted following of their followers.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And here's the key. Here's the key as well is that you want that person to manually and also through scale shortcut your way to finding more people just like them.
Yep.
And so if you look at Dr. Merkley's content again, and I do want to comment real quick just about the image that we used. It's very important when you do these images. Number one, even though he's off center, the key focal point of this image is him. It's not the product. There's a reason why we took this photo. We didn't take it from the other side where we can show the whole robotic system, all these things. We took it from this side because it's highlighting Dr. Merkley, right? Because we want to make the user the hero, not the technology. That's number one. The second thing is always drop these things into Canva or Instagram or whatever photo editor you want. Brighten the image up, create a little bit of contrast. Because again, when you're scrolling, you do want to stop the scroll. And the last thing I wanted to touch on is go ahead and do your research. I use omnicreator.club, shameless plug. That's a company I co-founded, but that's a software tool that we use for not only posting, but there is a feature in there that you can do hashtag research. And so we always go with the rule of thumb of 3 to 9 hashtags, some large hashtags like medtech, medical devices, and then some more niche ones. Like in this case, we use general surgery, robotic surgery, etc. Now we have that out of the way. The idea is that you want to incentivize this person to get in the habit of posting this content. So now if we scroll up, we start seeing Dr. Merkley posting a little bit more. He's sharing, but then we get to a point where he starts putting his own content. I think this just happened quite recently. Like, here we go. Like putting more of user-generated content. Okay, so this one got 130 likes. Okay, so again, if we look at this organic user content, we can scroll through. I've already seen a couple of surgeons just scrolling through this. Now you can start seeing which doctors are actually engaged with this content, meaning they're influenced by him, right? If we scroll up a little bit more, I think there's another product post. Here's another one. Okay, again, 129 likes. Like for his level of, for 3,000 followers, that's a good amount of engagement. Okay, so if you scroll through these, what you want to do, and again, this is something that's manual, but it works, is to start saying, okay, what surgeons do we see starting to engage with his content? Because then if this person is an advisor to you, they work very closely with your company, then you can say, hey, do you mind making an intro to this physician? We've noticed that this physician's liked your stuff, because now you're sure you don't have to guess who's going to be persuasive, right? Again, there's an assumption all the time when you have a KOL. It's like, oh, well, our KOL is going to influence all these people because a lot of people like that person or they're influenced by them. It's not necessarily the point. There's a lot of KOLs that I know of that some of their peers don't like them at all, right? And so this is one way where you can really shortcut your way in a very cost-efficient manner to figure this out, again, as you're mapping out your early market. And again, think of it like this. If you have 3 or 5 people like this, physicians who are posting, maybe you're helping with the post and everything, and I recommend personally, if you have a rep in the room, get the rep to take the photos, get the rep to copyright, get the rep to do all the heavy lifting on this, and you can sort of, game your way to good user-generated content. And after a few months of running this experiment, you figure out, hey, here are the ones that we can actually put a little ad money behind, put $200 to $500 behind it, drive more traffic, monitor, and see what happens. And then keep rinse, washing, and repeating this process. So, any other thoughts before we move on? And actually, let me go to the document here real quick. There's one other thing I do want to point out, which is when you do your targeting, okay, on LinkedIn, the moment, so again, in this case, we use general surgeon. When you type in your first job title on the targeting, there's going to be suggested job titles. There is a temptation for every marketer to be like, oh, I'm going to select all of these. Do not do that. Because think of it like this. When you select surgeon, doctor, and everything, your targeting criteria is going to jump by a lot. So you'll go from like a few thousand people targeted to like millions. You do not want that. You want to keep your targeting relatively low. It needs to be over 20,000. And even if it's under 20,000, that's fine. But again, it's better to be focused and to be too broad. And once you add those job titles, so in this case, we have general surgeon, medical doctor, surgeon, general surgery resident. To narrow it down, because medical doctor is a very broad category, we add some industries. So again, medical practices, hospitals, healthcare, higher education, okay? And then you can narrow it further by adding specific groups, right? So bariatric surgery, et cetera. And I always make sure that you, for some reason, even if you have it narrow like this, somehow the LinkedIn algorithm will put it in front of the wrong people. I make sure to go and put an exclusionary criteria and exclude anybody with these attributes, and I pretty much pick every single industry except for the ones that I just mentioned. I do want to point out, though, the obvious industries for doctors on LinkedIn are medical practices, hospitals, healthcare, and hospitals. The not so obvious one is higher education. If a physician is in academia, like their chair at Hopkins or something, they actually put higher education. So a lot of marketers miss a lot of physicians because of that one criteria. So
You forgot about the biggest factor of all is turning off.
Turning off audience
and
audience
expansion. That's the absolute biggest trap on LinkedIn, is having audience network on along with audience expansion.
Yeah.
We always, if we're gonna turn those on, there are separate campaigns, separate tests just to see what the impacts are. But I mean, 9 out of 10 times, it's just not worth it to have those on. We see low quality clicks, low quality leads. And it just, the whole point of LinkedIn is to have a very fine control over your target audience. And this just puts it just, I'm just not a fan of putting marketing out of the hands of the marketer and into some of these platforms.
Yes. And look, this is not just LinkedIn, this is Google, this is Twitter, because their whole thing is like, hey, we can figure out who you should target. If you're running a broad B2C campaign you don't know, sure, do that. Even on the B2B side, don't do this because it'll spend your money. Even on LinkedIn, when you unclick enable audience expansion. So audience expansion, aside from like on LinkedIn, depending on the ad type, they'll put it off LinkedIn on certain websites and stuff. So just by unclicking enable audience expansion, I immediately get a notification saying by disabling audience expansion, you're missing out on an estimated 44% more impressions and 26% lower cost per impression, okay? What that means, that makes sense, but the reason why is because they're targeting so many more people. So when you're targeting that much more people, it's going to cost less. You're still going to spend your money a lot faster, right? So do not leave it to these platforms, because on one side, yes, they want to get you a good result, but the other side is they want you to spend money, and their thing is like, oh, it didn't work. It's like, oh, you just need to spend more money,
Always test this.
Always test it.
But yeah, don't following the default settings on any platform can be a dangerous place to be. So we always recommend, if you do want to turn on audience expansion, like test it and validate for your specific target market or industry that it will or will not work. I think the default for a lot of people is that it generally doesn't work. Not to say that it won't work all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly. Yeah. And look, like what I would say also is always set a deadline. Do not just let these ads run. You might get sick, you might forget, and you end up spending a lot of money. And always put a lifetime budget. So always know, even when you duplicate a campaign. So if for this campaign, I put $500 as a lifetime budget. and a 7 to 10 day test. When I duplicate this campaign, LinkedIn duplicates everything except for the timeline. They put it to like, I think, a month or two by default. So they bump it up, and then for lifetime budget, they take it from 500 to 1,500. Because if you run it, you're not going to get that money back. You can't go to LinkedIn and be like, oh, I duplicated this, and then it didn't duplicate. They don't care. So always double check that. Always double check that. So that is it on that end. Or any other thoughts or comments before we move forward?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'll forward on this. We can talk about another, like setting up more of these campaigns, or is it a different topic?
I was gonna jump straight to the Apple topic, but like we can cover a little more.
Yeah, let's cover a little bit more on this one. So, in terms of a couple of like things, like cautionary tales, that I'll say, in terms of like tactically, and I love just diving into tactics, is that when you're setting up these campaigns on LinkedIn, is one, just be very cautious of making sure that these are separate ad sets or like campaign groups, and not looped in with other ads that you're running. Part of the reason for that is, you want your objective to be around engagement. You want people to have the in-platform consumption of this. Mm-hmm. But because of how LinkedIn does their engagement metrics, every action taken on your ad counts as an engagement. So if someone clicks see more, if someone likes or thumbs ups the comment, if they click on the image, right? And so if you run this with other ads that you're running at the same time, where you do want someone to take the action of going to your website and converting or anything like that, it can kind of screw up the metrics. It can eat up your budget, because LinkedIn's going to say, hey, we want to get more thumbs ups and likes and clicks. It will over optimize for that event. So if you're thinking about running thought leadership, just kind of keep in mind, run it as a separate bucket. Don't try and combine it with any existing ad campaigns that you're running. It will skew your metrics. It will eat up your budget. So it's a small thing to keep in mind, but it can have like major downstream impacts for you when running these types of campaigns.
I completely agree. And again, yeah, I see these campaigns, when you start them, as more like tactical campaigns than strategic. I mean, there is some strategy behind them, of course, but it is more tactical, as in it's a one and done. You get your learnings, you get some results, and then you can segue that into a bigger campaign where it's still a thought leadership piece. But you're like for these campaigns, I personally like to go with high top of funnel brand awareness campaign objective, and I just choose, in terms of ad format, an image. But you can take the same campaign and duplicate it, but start it in a different campaign group and get more into middle of funnel, where you're focused on, let's say, engagement. But again, I always recommend people don't try and do too many things at once with these ads. So again, if it's like, hey, we want to get more awareness about the product, we want to get some engagement, focus on that, and then be a savvy marketer, or hire an agency, whatever's best for you, and just retarget the people who engage with that content. Don't try and get their attention, convince them with the content, and then get them to click over to your website. It's just too many things at once. And I think too many times marketers are launching a campaign, and that they want that one campaign to do everything. They want it to get the attention of the user, they want it to educate somebody, and they want to convert them. It's very, very difficult and rare, if anything, that you have a campaign that does it all. There used to be a time in history, or Ed and I both remember those days, where you can find a campaign, just run it, and you can just run that thing for like a year, tweak it just a little bit. Those days are gone, unfortunately.
Yeah. On the campaign objective, I'll kind of add some insights here. So I recommend testing between like the brand awareness and then the engagement campaign objective for the thought leadership campaigns. Once again, just kind of see what drives overall like the better results for you. Generally like the engagement one, because we want people to comment, we want people to thumbs up the post, and at the end of the day, we're trying to optimize for in-platform consumption. Those tend to be the cheapest, because LinkedIn, Facebook, but in this case LinkedIn, they want to keep everyone on platform. They don't want you bouncing to your website or bouncing to another place. So you can get better, better metrics by using these kind of in-platform type objectives, engagements being one of them, because it keeps you on the platform, doesn't bounce you elsewhere. And with using the engagement objective, it kind of creates that additional social proof as more folks thumbs up content, comment on it. It adds to it and kind of continues to grow and has this snowballing effect. So yeah, but like I said, we're big fans of both, but definitely have the consideration of testing brand versus engagement and looking at the end of metrics to see which one drives you better results. You can tell I'm not a fan of just like, this is the only way to do it. I was like, test it and then kind of see how that impacts what you're doing.
100%.
Yep.
And I think the bigger theme here behind this entire strategy is going back to this graphic here, which is what are the things that you're doing? Let me move this over. Whoops, should not have done that.
All good.
What are the things that you're doing specifically here in the adoption cycle to create a very strong signal to noise? I think people, a lot of marketers, I think every early stage marketer I talk to overestimates the familiarity that a given group of people have with their product. And I think that you're like, even if you have a great booth at a conference, you're putting out some content, you have some PR, you'd be surprised how many potential users still don't know about your product. And so always constantly going back and saying, hey, like, you know, like me personally, like if I were to start in an early stage company and we just went commercial, I would really push hard to do a 2 to 3 webinars per quarter. Right. I know it's a lot, but it can be done. You know, it doesn't have to always be a KOL. It could be somebody internally putting content out every single week. It just takes a lot. It takes a lot to get the attention of these people and then get it to a point where they're willing to lean in and convert, you know? And if you do the hard work from now, you'll set yourself up for success as you start to ramp up commercial.
Founder-led content, right? That's what we want to see.
Founder-led content. Yeah, founder-led content is always good. But user-generated content, you know, I know there's this Paul Graham about this whole thing about founder mode. Maybe we should come up with our own like marketer mode, you know. And so I think the one thing that you have to optimize for is you should optimize to grow your awareness and pipeline as much as possible and not be concerned about the fact that like, oh, we don't have enough product in inventory or we're not going to be able to like, service those accounts and everything. It's like, deal with that when you have the demand. You know, the problem that people, they make the mistake of dealing with is worrying about the supply first and not worrying about the demand. Get as much demand as you possibly can, and then you can worry about like how you're going to service them, supply, etc. Because, you know, attention is finite, and just because you're able to engage a lead in a moment in time doesn't mean that opportunity is going to exist in the future. That's the thing you got to keep in mind.
Yeah, I like that. That kind of goes back to like the general consensus around like demand generation, right? Like basically it's kind of been proven that only 3 to 5% of your market at any time is in an active buying mode. Everyone goes after that same 3 to 5%. It's a very small pool of people that shrinks and is highly competitive. Meanwhile, you have this massive untapped opportunity with the other 97 to 95% of people that are not in market today, but will be in market at some point in the future. And there's an opportunity to position yourselves as the thought leader, as kind of the first choice that comes to mind when those people are ready to make that purchase decision. Another fun stat is like when people do reach that point, they already have a short list of 3 companies in mind. Right. And it's an uphill battle to displace any of those three companies. And this is where you see companies that run the comparison ads or competitor ads, and you might get a small little bump to steal folks here and there, but for the most part, the perceptions, the realities people's is already made up, and it was made up weeks, if not months ago. And I always kind of harp back to that when we start talking about the, top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel, but then also kind of, in your thesis here around this innovation curve as well too, and how it applies to industries.
100%. And something I wanted to point out is that what we're talking about here with the user-generated content, specifically these KOL, DOL ads, it is technically bottom of funnel content, which is a reason to believe. And the reason why it works is because, as mentioned, based on the adoption criteria and the psychology of these people you're trying to target, right? Specifically, innovators, right? Is that they're willing to see the future with their eyes closed. Like, they don't need to see much, right? And so it becomes easier to get them here. However, that being said, while you're working this bottom of funnel, right, with reasons to believe in the solution, testimonials, a lot of this is product based, right? You have to simultaneously work the top of your funnel on non-branded content, educating people about the problem you solve and everything, because the entire adoption curve starts and lives up here first. And I think a lot of mistakes that people make is to assume that, oh, this is where we should focus, is like right down here. This is where everything is. In reality, it really looks like this, where you're trying to build a strong top of funnel to just capture more and more of these people, right? And if we expand this adoption curve here, let me just go to right here. I mean, it's maybe not to scale. Not everybody's going to fit in your middle and bottom of funnel. You're going to miss some people out. But your top of funnel is at least going to engage these people, and for the time being, find a way to filter them down through. That's the thing that I always try and tell people is like, hey, look, if you build strong top of funnel awareness, both in person and digitally, there's going to be a level of awareness with those people. So at some point, we start strengthening your middle and bottom of funnel with more testimonials, reasons to believe in everything. It serves as a way of throughput to pull them through into a conversion event. Versus what I always see is that these companies, they just focus on building this, and you can have a middle and bottom of funnel that's like this with all kinds of testimonials and product features and everything, and they keep opening this more and more, and they're like, man, why are we not converting? The reason why is because you're dealing with a low level of market awareness and assuming that just by expanding your middle and bottom of funnel content and strategy that's going to be strong enough to pull them through. And it can happen sometimes, but it's rare. It really is. And you end up spending a lot of money and time, Yeah,
this is the downfall of lead generation and short-sighted marketing, is that you'll see, if you go straight to this bottom of the funnel, you'll see some initial early traction. You'll get win, you'll get leads. Things will look great. You might chug along in this phase for, a few months, 3-6 months, sometimes a year. I'll kind of chugging on this phase, but then eventually you start slowly seeing your cost per leads increase. You start seeing your conversion rates go down, close rates and everything. But it's such a slow, gradual thing. But it's like a very slow march to the death of your lead gen process, right? And so, huge mistake that we always see companies make. Things look great early on, and then they fall flat a few months or quarter plus later because they only focus on this phase and nothing on the top of the funnel awareness, storytelling, middle of the funnel.
Exactly. And again, this is the dangerous part about this. And I want to point out something that Oret said, is that you can focus on building the strong middle and bottom of funnel. And at some point, you're going to get lucky, you'll get lucky. For example, it happens because keep in mind, this is not a cookie cutter thing. Human psychology, especially market sophistication, is different today. I had if I think of my Mount Rushmore of digital marketers, Neil Patel is on there. Neil Patel was on my show last week, and I asked him about a lot of strategies and ads and SEO and everything. And he said, yeah, it looked like a lot of these strategies and tactics that were used 10, 15 years ago still work today, The problem is that it's not that they're outdated strategies. It's the fact that you have way more competition, way more. And so the thing I also want to point out is that sometimes you might end up with something from mainstream market, and you get them to convert down here. And people think like, oh, like now we got that one, like we can just keep building. And it's a mistake, because there's all kinds of reasons why people adopt. And I think by, if you allow these kind of things to skew you and you don't follow the process of being disciplined and saying, hey, great, our product stuff is resonating, we've got some wins, we've got some people in pipeline, we still got to build this top of funnel. You have to be disciplined about that. As a marketer, it's very easy to get focused on what's working really, really well, because eventually what's working well now is going to stop working. And when it stops working, I don't see people saying, hey, we gotta go and spend the time to build this top of funnel stuff or other things, because that takes time. And because it takes time, it's like, no, let's just keep building more of this bottom funnel stuff. Like, let's just do a different angle, right? Like, the one thing I would say is, like, when you think about conversions, there's this concept of like, when you're building conversions on a landing page, let's say you have a conversion of 5%, and you're like, we want to like triple that. Tripling it isn't going to come down to like, oh, let me change the color of the page, let me make it shorter, let me do this and everything. It's going to be something like radically different. Like, for example, if you're sending somebody to a landing page and it's let's say it's a 5-minute webinar, a 5-minute video sales letter, the radical change is, hey, maybe we need to duplicate this page. Instead of a 5-minute video, it's just going to be images of the slide deck, and it's going to be long form and with a book a demo at the end. Like, radically different things. So again, when this stops working, right, and we're down here, and this middle funnel stuff stops working, and you have to start doing other things, a lot of marketers, in my opinion, don't do these other things because they realize like, oh, I'm not going to be able to accomplish that within a quarter. And because of that timeline, the pressure from the board and the commercial community, then you start doing all this stuff. This is where, Orat and I, we talk about this all the time. This is where the lead gen stuff gets out of control, because it's like, oh, like I can just put money into this machine and like it'll spit something out at some point. Let me just keep putting money in and like tweaking these little things, and you're just like running yourself in circles.
Yeah, this is where companies scramble to find the next thing that's going to work. And you'll see this when like they miss their monthly and quarterly goals, right? And it kind of starts this death spiral loop. Hey, let's put more money into ads. Things get more expensive. Ads are not working. Like, what else can we do? And then this absolutely leads to like the shotgun approach to marketing, where like start throwing things at the wall to see what sticks, because of this situation that companies get them. It's like the lead gen death spiral, and it's hard to do.
Lead gen death spiral, yeah.
It's hard to pull yourself out of this, because, like you said, you have to go all the way back up the funnel and basically restructure how you do marketing and re-educate the team and leadership how you do marketing, and really emphasize, hey, we have to do these pieces that further educate and bring our target customers or target prospects through the journey of what it's like to use our product, why they need it, the success stories, the proof cases, and build that story up. But it takes time and doesn't produce immediate results. And this is the biggest kicker: you won't always get direct attribution to the activities that you're doing. Right. And so it's like this trifecta that kind of causes this spiral. And it all really stems from people just only focusing bottom funnel, only doing lead gen. And it just goes on from there. It's a terrible place to be in. I've been there before as a marketer several times. Very hard for a marketer to get out of that situation. Very hard for companies to get out of the situation. Not impossible. It just takes time and a shift in mindset to do so.
No, 100%. And like, again, just to point this out, and we'll kind of wrap up on this before we get into Q&A, is like, Orat went through this document of his on the different levels of awareness, but more importantly, like all the different pieces you need. Right. So if we just look at, I think, yeah, here we go. If we just look at top of funnel, right, in terms of, potential pieces of content you need, like this is just top of funnel stuff, right? Yeah. So all these things take time to build out. And so again, it's okay to run this strategy that we talked about, right? Where sure, you're focused down here in the bottom of the funnel by running a KOL ad strategy because, you're like, hey, we need to get people who just get it. We don't have to educate them. They just need to get it because they're going to be great adopters. That's fine. But simultaneously, you have to be disciplined. And again, shameless plug, but like, look, I used Orit and his agency for a long time when I was a marketer. Now I have my own agency. We work with companies on this. This is why it's important to have agency partners, because as a marketer, even of a team of 3 and 5, you're busy with so many things. You need somebody else to hold you accountable to doing this stuff. Me personally, one thing I've noticed, and again, I have an agency myself, I still have marketers helping me, is when you work with third-party partners, they almost serve as like a career business coach in the sense that they make sure that you're disciplined to stay on track with these other things that are not going to produce a result right away, but you have to do them because it takes time to do. So I know we kind of like we're probably going to run out of time. So I don't know if you want to talk about the AirPods thing real quick. You want to just cover that real quick?
Yeah, we can chat about this. So Apple had their annual Apple event. Was it yesterday or the day before? And I thought this is so interesting, that the announcement of the updates that they're having to the AirPods Pro 2, which I'm literally wearing right now. And the new feature on this is like they're going to roll out a hearing test and basically have hearing aids built into this device, right? And you don't need to go out and buy new AirPod Pros 2s or anything like that. It's just an over-the-air update. You literally just do the hearing test right on your phone, and then it will adopt the hearing aid or the hearing device to kind of meet your individual needs. Which I thought this is look at this fascinating.
Look at the message. A clinical grade hearing aid. Now it's just hearing aid, clinical grade.
Yeah.
So
and you got to imagine that like there are probably dozens of startups that saw this and like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Apple's now in our territory. But I find it fascinating as this hardware product, that kind of the consumer product now becoming like a prosumer product and becoming basically a clinical product. And so who knows what's next, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm trying to think, I'm trying to look it up, but I know there's some specific hearing aid companies. I just wonder if they're public. Here we go. Yeah. I just want to look. I mean, while we're talking, Eargo is one of them, but I don't know. Is there? Oh no, Eargo is no longer publicly traded. Okay, never mind.
And I would imagine this is not going to completely replace hearing aids, but at the same time, there's got to be a dent that's going to happen from Apple doing something like this. And probably more than just a dent, but
oh, totally. Yeah, it looks like there's no public stock on these things, but yeah, I did think it was very interesting. Like specifically, so let's look at these like so by the way, if you want like a really good like lesson on persuasion, just go look at what Apple does in terms of copywriting. So pioneering hearing. Okay. Take a hearing test at home. Okay. That's a big one. And then they get straight to some features and then a clinical grade hearing aid. So it's interesting. I think I don't know about Europe, but I think it's a really interesting time to be in our industry just because, all these large companies in tech and everything, they're moving into healthcare space. So I think it's a great time to be a marketer. There's a lot of opportunity, a lot of competition too.
A lot, yeah.
So
between that AI, it's a pretty interesting time. We're on the
100%.
We're on one of your on the upward trend of your hype curve.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Well, look, we got a few minutes left. Let's just see on our Zoom. Are there any questions anybody wants to ask? Feel free to unmute yourself and come on. Going once, going twice. No questions at all. Okay.
Nope.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Don't forget, we do this every week on Zoom. So check the show notes below. Go ahead and register for our next event. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, go ahead and check the show notes. I'm going to leave a link to the document that we just went through. And as always, Orat, thank you so much. And we'll see everybody next time.
Yep. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who'd really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.